Hello and welcome to Jay Saying Stuff During Lockdown. This is the, albeit belated, 10th episode, which also for me marks a milestone of reaching double figures of making these videos, showing up for myself consistently week after week, and improving on both my dexterity, vocabulary, and presentation skills, hopefully, with fewer ums, ahs, and likes in between each sentence and segue. So I think I've mentioned in previous weeks, though, that there has been a bit of a holding pattern with some of the things that I've been saying, like not least because we are still in a national and at large international lockdown because of the COVID-19 virus, even though we're here now in 2021. But that is now coming to closer to an end, at least. And for me, I think, as I expressed in my last video, I think there's going to be a change of tone and tune from me, especially now that I have decided a lot more clearly what I intend to do with some of the content that I'm creating. And I've now forged some new relationships with some of the partners and people that I have also mentioned over previous weeks to combine and settle on what will be my new audio and audiovisual podcast series called The Values Exchange. Let me tell you a little bit more about it, if for those of you who are interested. So last year, 2020, back at the end of May, the beginning of June, a moment in our collective consciousness that I'm hoping everybody will remember. It was the George Floyd moment, and I call it the George Floyd moment, not separate or different to so many moments that came before it, from Sandra Bland, Eric Garner, Tamir Rice, Trayvon Martin, the list goes on. But because of the perfect storm created by the COVID pandemic and other like externalities, everybody for a change or on this occasion happened to be in front of their screens, and there was a bigger amount of people seeing this heinous act of cowardice, brutality, criminality than have ever seen before. And the collective decided amongst everybody that it was enough. This is something that we have to do something about. In that moment, and again, I will keep on referring to it as a moment just because, I mean, it's kind of how it's panned out. But I mean, more on that in future episodes. But in that moment, I decided to put together a new concept and idea called the Black in the Open Institute, the BITO.institute, if you want to look it up online. And this is about how can we bring these conversations about blackness, about race, about systemic prejudice and racism at large into the open, because it's only when these conversations, when these concepts, when these narratives are brought plainly and clearly into the open that we can ever start to make any real sense or ever start looking at how we can collectively come together to create solutions. And so it was as part of the creation of this new institute, which slowly has been ticking along in the background over the last 9 months, registered the company, got accountants, a treasurer, a website, allies, accomplices, a community of advisors, and other people as well who've all kind of come together on an idea which is still nascent really, but will be continuing to come together with my leadership and with the support and help of others around me. But it was in the creation of this that I recognized that it was a very, very value-driven project. Now, as I then began to talk to different people who were also trying to make the most of the moment, and I refrain from using the word capitalize there on purpose, because I am kind of referring to the people who saw that it was a social inflection moment more than an economic opportunity of a moment, which of course it was. Whenever there is chaos, whenever there is volatility, there is always an economic opportunity. But there was also a massive social opportunity for us to start looking at how we can come together, how we can do things as communities, and not just communities of race, of gender, of color, of all these different ways that we have been divided and conquered, but communities based around our shared values. And so this was where the idea for my new podcast or my new content creation, the Values Exchange, was born. I recognize that in the conversations I've been having with different people, what actually I found to bond me to certain people and kind of keep me at arm's length from others was not necessarily our socioeconomic status, our gender, where we come from, or even sometimes some of our cultural beliefs. Ultimately, it was the values that underpin those, and it made me recognize that the people that I'm looking for, the people that we are looking for, to be able to move to a new paradigm in our understanding of our human existence, moving away from this kind of eco side, environmental side, linear model to this collective donor economic, whereby we recognize and respect our environmental and ecological limits, and we look to find balance. It was in that time and in that space around those conversations that it made me recognize that, wow, there are certain people who, when we talk, their values are very similar to mine, or sometimes even if they're not similar, underpinning those values is a similar kind of drive. And it made me recognize that there is a really important set of conversations to be had in that area, because I think that what the mass media and social media and the attention driven economy at large has been doing so expertly and deftly over the last 10, 15, 20 years is finding people's differences to drive individualism. And in that individualism, sure, it's helping people find new markets, new people to create new products to sell to. And I say sure as if that's like a good thing in any sense. It's not. But the worst thing about it is that it's pulled people away from ideological maypoles, stuff like citizenry rather than consumerism, something that I've also touched on previously. So for me, the creation of this new Values Exchange podcast is going to be an opportunity to highlight to other people as well that the things that actually hold us apart or pull us apart are nowhere near as strong as some of the values and things that bring us together. And I'm hoping that I'll be able to highlight that over a series of conversations with people from across the world, from different understandings, different age groups, different everything to me, but understanding that at their core, we are all human beings. We all do breathe the same air. We all kind of have the same at our heart, expectations of mastery, autonomy, of love. We all need shelter. We all need food. We all need water. And so it just it became apparent to me that conversations that draw back to those basics are probably the best way to find any of that common unity, to develop those communities that it is that we're trying to engender and build towards. So really what I wanted to tell everybody for this episode is that watch this space. I'm going to be feathering the nest. Again, me and my non-vegan turns of phrases. I'm not going to get into that. But I'm going to be feathering the nest over the following weeks here on YouTube on these videos to kind of explain what it is that I want to do with the podcast, and whether or not you or other people or people you may know, maybe people who are relevant to the conversation, people who you think, or even if you think yourself, would be someone who would be great to have a conversation about what motivates us, what drives us, and how can we instill some of those more kind of core values into a new generation who the onus is going to be on largely as in essence the new workforce, the new generation of people who are going to be shaping the world over the next 20, 30, 40 years. So yes, lastly on that, I have been, it's very timely, I would say. I was going to say lucky, but back to that quote I gave from Gary Player, the more you practice, the luckier you get. The more you have conversations in this space, and the more you work towards your value-driven goals, the more other value-driven individuals, institutions, and ideas and concepts, they gravitate towards you too. And so now, in conjunction with both I Am Sound Academy, who I've mentioned previously, and also Seeds, they will both be my content partners in creating this new podcast, and I have some very exciting conversations lined up from the very beginning. So yes, this does denote and demarcate a very new and exciting content direction for me, and I'm just really looking forward to bringing it to you, to me, to everyone, and seeing what value it can bring to our lives, passively listening, and then also what we can do actively by taking part, or what we can do based on the actions and takeaways from these conversations to build that better world that we all know that we can get if we just fight for it. So yeah, that's kind of my little amble for today. And my quote for today from James Clear himself, the author of Atomic Habits, the book which I've also recommended previously and I will recommend again, is: school requires you to learn about things after the answer has already been decided. Life requires you to learn about things while the answer is in the process of being decided. So for me, again, it just highlights that life is school. Like, life is meant to be one long journey. I mean, it reminds me of the other quote, or another quote, which I read recently, which is where the student asks the teacher, how long before I master this? And the teacher goes, how long do you expect to live? Because mastery, like autonomy, like learning, is a lifelong process. And the sooner that we can get our minds and our heads and our understandings around that and see ourselves as part of an infinite game rather than these finite individuals, the sooner we can be on our path to a better world, a better understanding, and hopefully the saviour of all of this. So yeah, for me, I think that's it for this week. Again, thank you everybody for your patience. I've taken a couple more days to bring this one to air, but I think it's actually quite important that what's kind of been culminating over the last couple of weeks and kind of really has kind of hit the business end in these last few days is that I will now be creating a new series, The Values Exchange, which I can't wait to share with everybody. So continue to watch this space, and thanks again from me and Violet here. See you next time.